Today we're going to go over the iPhone camera settings that you should be using to capture stunning photos and videos. Obviously, there are no one perfect camera settings that fit everyone's needs. So I'll go over the iPhone camera settings for both serious photography and videography enthusiasts and people who simply just want to capture the best quality photos and videos straight out of their phone. So before we get started, just so you know that I'm using an iPhone 15 Pro Max today as demonstration, but any of the recent iPhone models should have very similar functions and features. Just so you know that there might be some differences in between, but the same concepts should work for most of the iPhones nowadays. So let's start from the very top. We have record video, and inside record video I have this set to 4K 24 frames per second all the time. And the main reason behind this is so that we have those kind of motion blur in videos where it makes it a bit more film-like or cinematic, if you will. And if you take a closer look, you can actually see that Apple gives you a short description for each settings down here. So with 4K 20 frames per second, it says film style, and if you want to save space, you want to go to like 720p at 30 frames per second, which I usually don't recommend because we're trying to go with the best quality over here. Unless you're really running out of space on your phone, then that's probably where you want to go to. A general idea to keep in mind is that with 60 frames per second, you can always slow the footage down a little bit in order to create that slow motion effect, because essentially it's capturing more frames per second compared to the 24 frames per second like I'm filming right now, where you can see motion blur if I'm waving my hands right here. With higher frame rate, you won't be able to see that much of a blur. Do keep in mind that if you're shooting in 4K 60 frames per second, this is gonna take up the most storage space on your phone. And then down at the bottom, pretty much all I have toggled on is the enhanced stabilization. It does zoom in slightly when you're taking videos or when you're in cinematic mode. I wouldn't say by much, and it does give you more stabilized footage. So the rest I have pretty much all of them turned off. One thing to notice is the HDR video. I have this turned off because I find the quality of the video, it just gives you this unnatural feel to it, and I personally just don't like it. Definitely give this a try if you want to, but I generally recommend having this off. Now let's come back out. For slow motion, I have it at 1080, 120 frames per second. You can also do 240, but personally I don't shoot much slow motion at all with my phone, so I leave it at 120. For record cinematic, I have this at 4K 24 frames per second, just like the record video. This option doesn't really matter to me that much because I rarely use the cinematic mode on the iPhone due to various reasons that we'll talk about later in this video. Now the next important page is format. Inside format, you can choose high efficiency or most compatible. I have this on high efficiency all the time because it saves more storage space on my iPhone. And at the same time, the photos and video files will work seamlessly throughout all of your Apple devices. However, if you use a PC, you might want to consider choosing most compatible. This way you can read the photos and video files on your PC. Down here we have photo mode. You can choose either 12 megapixels or 24 megapixels. I have this at 24 megapixels all the time. Basically, this is when you're taking a photo normally with your main camera, the 1X camera. This includes normal photos and live photo, but do keep in mind that over here you can see that photos taken with night mode, macro, flash, or portrait lighting will be only saved at 12 megapixels. But if you're just capturing everyday live photos where you don't want to take the time to learn and edit them, then this is the highest resolution that you can get from the 1X main camera. So if you're really serious about photography, where you want to learn and then really practice how to like edit your photos, or maybe you're a professional, then this is the settings that you'll want to change, which is the Pro RAW and resolution control. You want to turn that on. And then right after that, with the Pro settings, you want to switch to Pro RAW Max. This is going to give you up to 48 megapixels Pro RAW files. And with Pro RAW files, it does takes a lot more storage space. Down here you can see that it takes roughly 75 megabytes for Pro RAW photos at 48 megapixels, because essentially a RAW file gives you more dynamic range and information in the file, which means you'll have more flexibility in post when you're adjusting your photos. So if you don't really care about editing your photos in post, then go ahead and just turn the Pro RAW and resolution control off. Obviously, this is not going to give you the highest quality of the photo that you can take on your phone at 48 megapixels, megapixels. All of your photos are gonna go back to 24 megapixels, but this way you can save more space on your phone and you don't have to worry about like editing the photos later on before you post them. So I say for most people, generally speaking, you don't have to turn this on. Just shoot everything at 24 megapixels, like the one you toggled on earlier before. The next section over here is something new with spatial video for Apple Vision Pro. Obviously, if you have Apple Vision Pro, you might want to turn on this so you can capture things that you can view in Apple Vision Pro. Now, I personally don't have one. I have this turned off, but you can always have it on and then toggle it on in the camera app. Now, I personally don't own an Apple Vision Pro, but if you do, definitely give this a try and let me know in the comment section down below if it's worth it or not. Now, at the very bottom of the page, it has Apple ProRes and I have this turned on. Basically, what this does is it allows you to shoot in log format. So with the ProRes encoding, I have this toggle to log footage. So this is going to give you the highest video quality, just like the ProRAW setting that we toggled on earlier. With the log footage, you'll retain more information inside the video, and this makes it easier with more flexibility when you're editing in post. Say that you want to color correct and color grade your footage. Now, if you don't really care about color grading your video in post, where you just want the video straight out of the camera and you're not going to do much editing or post production on your video, then just go ahead and turn this off. This way you can save more storage on your phone, and the video you record on your phone will have color. Since if you're shooting in log, there won't be any color. It's going to be like a flat profile. And then next, we're going to go to preserve settings. This is basically where you can save all the settings that you wanted to save on your phone, so you don't have to go into the camera app and then adjust again whenever you start shooting. So here is the list that I use all the time. The very first one is camera mode. I have this on all the time because if I'm shooting something, I want to go back and then use the same camera, such as like for photos or even for videos. And I have the creative control on, depth control on as well, which I'll kind of go into later when we go to the camera app. And I also have the macro control on. This way I can toggle the macro mode on and off whenever I want to use it or if I don't want to use it. But I don't want to have it on automatically all the time. And then the next one is exposure adjustment. I have this off because I want to adjust it due to like different scenes that I'm shooting. With night mode, I also have this off. Portrait zoom, I have this on, and then with the action mode, I have this off because I don't need to use it every single time. So I want to make sure that this is off by default, and if I really need it, I'll turn it on. Because essentially, when you're shooting in action mode, it doesn't give you the highest quality in your video. And it also crops in quite a bit, so I don't use this often unless I really need to use it. And down here, we have the ProRAW and resolution control. Obviously, I have this on. And then with the Apple ProRes, I actually have this off because shooting in log takes a lot of memory space inside the phone, and I don't necessarily need to use the log footage on an iPhone every single time. It might be like a quick story on Instagram. I don't need to shoot in log for that. So normally I just keep this off, and then this way I can like toggle it on in the camera app, which I'll show you guys later. Then with live photo, I have this turned on. Down here with spatial video, I have this off. Now I know I went through these fairly quickly, but you can go into the details and read the little description down at the bottom to really determine if it fits your shooting style. And this way you can really preserve the camera settings to your liking. Now let's go back out to the settings. We have record stereo sound. I have this off and use volume up or bust. I have this turned on as an option, but you can also do that in the camera app. And then I have scan QR codes turned on. I often use this for like menus at the restaurants. I also have the show detected text turned on. And this actually comes quite handy for my work, which I never thought I'd use this function that much, but it is very helpful. I also use this function whenever I'm traveling to a different country where I can highlight the text and copy them and then save it to kind of learn the language, and I'll translate them and then keep it in my vocabulary list. And down here at the composition section, I say this is probably another important aspect inside the camera app. I have the grid turned on. This is going to give you a very simple rule of third grid. Now down here we have the level. This is the line that'll show up in your camera app, and then it'll tell you if you're level or not. I have this on all the time as well. Then we have the mirror front camera. I have this turned off. View outside the frame, I have this turned on. Down here with main camera with the iPhone 15 Pro and the Pro Max, it actually has like different focal length that you can turn on. The normal one, the 1X, is 24, and then you can have 28, 35. I said this is more like a gimmick to people who are into street photography. These are like a general purpose lens that we typically use for street photography. Now I have all of these turned on where I can toggle through different focal lengths whenever I want to. But this really depends on your personal shooting style. So I'll leave this up to you to see which focal lengths you want to use or which default lens you want the camera to open to whenever you open the camera app. Now here's an important setting I have turned off, which is to prioritize faster shooting. Because we're trying to get the highest image quality on your phone. So adapting the image quality while we rapidly press the shutter doesn't really make sense in this case. And then I have the lens correction here turned on, as well as the macro control turned on, where we can see a toggle in the camera app that we can turn the macro on or off. Alrighty, now let's go to the camera app. So right on top over here, this is probably the most thing that I use all the time, is the RAW Max. As you see, if you tap on it, you can turn it off, and you can tap again to turn it on. Now with RAW Max, that's where you can capture the highest quality photo on your phone at 48 megapixel. Do keep in mind that's with the 1X camera at 24mm. And if you long press on RAW Max, you can have the different settings. You can do Heat Max, RAW at 12 megapixel, or the maximum resolution that you can capture. Now I usually just keep this at RAW Max, and if I know I'm not going to edit the photo I'm taking, I'll turn this off right away. This way it's not going to take too much space on my phone. And on the right side, this has live mode. And I say if you're not looking to edit your photos, turning on live mode is actually a good idea, because when you take a photo and you didn't happen to capture the right decisive moment that you wanted, you can always go to the photo and choose the frame that you like the most. This way you'll have a higher chance of capturing the shot that you want. Another benefit with live photo is that you can use live photo for long exposure photo, which gives you a very unique effect. And like we mentioned earlier, where you can change the different focal length on the camera app, with the 1X, if you tap on the 1X camera, it goes to 28mm, and then 35, and then it goes back to 24, which is the 1X camera. Now in order to capture the highest quality, I would suggest you to use the 1X camera. But if you want to play around with different focal lengths, by all means, give it a try. Now the ultra wide angle, which is the 0.5 camera here, it used to be a little, I wouldn't say like the best quality at all, and it was just more like a gimmick. It's fun to use. And now with the iPhone 15 Pro Max or the Pro, or maybe even just the iPhone 15 in general, the ultra wide angle lens is actually quite decent. I find myself using it more and more because of the ultra wide angle effect. And if you have the iPhone 15 Pro Max like I do, you also get the 5X telephoto lens, which gives you a very unique compression look to your photo. Now we have these two toggles on the side of the camera app. On the left, that's the macro mode. You can toggle this on or off whenever you need it, because that's how we set it in our camera setting. Now on the right bottom side of the camera, you can see that if there's text in the frame, it'll show up with this icon, and you can press on it and you can highlight all the text in the frame that you're looking for. Now with spatial audio for Apple Vision Pro, if you have that turned on, you can also toggle it on or off inside the camera app, if you will. So if you're looking to capture the highest quality photos and videos on your phone, I'll stick with just the Photos app and the Video app, because that's using the actual camera on the phone. You get this natural bokeh whenever you're close to like a subject. That'll give you like the most natural looking bokeh, which is the blurry background that you see in photography all the time. However, if you want to play with the cinematic mode a little bit, which I personally don't use as much, but you can definitely do that. Or you can go to portraits for photos and also the cinematic mode in like for videos. I usually keep the aperture, which is the f-stop on the top right over here. And then I keep it around like 5.6 or even like 6.3. I find this gives you like a better roll off for the blurry background, because having like lower aperture, like this goes all the way down to like f1.4. Personally, I find that separation between the subject and the background of f1.4 just doesn't really, like it doesn't look natural. Let's just put it that way. And the same concept applies to the cinematic video. I have the aperture set to like 5.6 or even 6.3. Now let's go back to the regular photo function. Basically, if you swipe up, or if you see the arrow up here, you can tap that to like have more function down at the bottom. And then you can change the exposure here if you want to. Then the timer, I say this is probably the most useful feature whenever you are taking a group photos. One feature that many people don't know about in the Photos app is that when you're taking a photo, you can press the shutter and then swipe to the left. It's gonna do like a burst photo right away. This is like the fastest way if you want to do burst photo compared to pressing down the volume button here. And if you long press on the subject, it'll lock the auto exposure and the autofocus. On top of that, you can also adjust the exposure where it's gonna keep that in lock. I say this is very helpful, especially if you have your phone on a tripod and you have like everything set in front of you. You don't want to change any settings. By locking this, it's gonna keep that settings in so you can take the photos. Now that you have taken the photos or video that you like, generally for photos, I'll put it in Lightroom right away and then put out my presets and then adjust from there, where I'll have the presets down in the description if you're interested. This is kind of like a shortcut for you to start with, and then obviously no presets fits for all photos, so you do have to do some adjustment to it. But it's always a good start and it's faster that way in my opinion. So definitely check them out. I use these presets on an everyday basis and it just makes your photos pop more. And if you're interested in learning how to edit photos, let me know in the comment section and I'll make a video going through my editing process. There are also many other apps that I use for photos, such as VSCO app, Afterlight, Snapseed that I use once in a while, it has great functions in there. There's also Dashcam that's really popular nowadays. It gives you that film simulation look to your photos. And if you like to use an iPad to edit your photo, Luminar just recently released their iPad app and the AI tools in there are phenomenal. I've been playing around with it recently and it's been really fun. For video editing on a phone, I have to say CapCut is probably the best one so far in my opinion. Another one would be VN Editor. This one seems to be like a direct competitor, like for as far as video editing app on your phone or even on a computer now. So now that you have all the settings down, it's time to go out and shoot, create, and enjoy the process.